Hello, my name is Juliet English, and Sylvia has asked me to share a little bit with you about home education in the UK. So in the UK, the law is very favourable towards parents. The law says, Section 7 of the 1996 Education Act states that the parent of every child of compulsory school age shall cause him or her to receive a full-time education suitable to his or her age, ability, and aptitude, and B, to any special educational needs he or she may have, either by regular attendance at school or otherwise. And in our situation here, otherwise would be the category that home education falls under. But it's very interesting to note that it says the parent of every child shall cause him or her to receive a full-time education. So you can see that the law states very clearly that the responsibility for education is actually with the parents, and it's actually up to the parents whether they decide to delegate that to a school or not. The law as it stands maintains a very healthy balance between parent and state. Unfortunately, we're finding more challenges more recently to this balance, but I will talk a bit about that shortly. So in the UK, we think that there are about 100,000 home educators in the UK. We don't know exact numbers because you're actually not legally obliged to register your child as home educated. So there are a lot of estimates of how many children are home educated in the UK, but we think it's around 100,000. Very difficult to know. So how registration works, so there's no such thing as a home educating register in this country, even though sometimes people do refer to it. This is what how it looks in practice. So first of all, if a child has never been to school, there's no obligation on the parent to inform the school or to inform the government, to inform anybody that they're home educating. If a local authority becomes aware of a family, like the doctor might inform that to the local authority, someone else might make that report, then the local authority can follow the same steps that you'll see here. But if a child is in school, the parents can instruct the school to remove the child from their register. So they don't request permission. They tell the school, I am removing my child, please take them off your register. The parents still don't have to tell the local authority. It is up to the school to notify the local authority that a child is being home educated. And then the local authority may make contact with the family and say, we'd like to find out how you plan to fulfill this obligation to provide education. And the parents should then respond. They can respond in different ways. They can, if they want to, they can agree to a visit in their home or a phone call or a Zoom, that kind of thing. But parents don't have to. And there's many good reasons why you would not want somebody in your home or to talk over the phone, because if you've only got a verbal record, that can be changed when the officer writes their report. They might write it very differently. So they may be very nice to you in person and then actually go and write something that look really make you look bad. So parents often in this country will choose to supply a report. So they ask to keep all communication in writing, and they will send a report. And local, even though there's no requirement in law, many of them do this once a year. There are some who try and do it more often, but legally that's a bit of it's considered bad practice for them to harass you more than once a year. And certainly in this country, people do really try and understand their rights and hold their ground on that. So perhaps then you send a report or the person comes around to see you and the local authority is not terribly happy, they don't think the education is suitable, they can then request more information under something that is called a notice to satisfy. So then the parent has to provide much more information to satisfy them that the education is suitable. And then if the local authority still has concerns, they can issue a school attendance order. So they can say to the parent, we're issuing you a school attendance order. You have this amount of time to comply and to register your child at this or the other school. But even then, the parent can choose to ignore it, in which case the local authority would then take the parent to court. And it would be up to a judge to make the decision. So parents still have the opportunity, and particularly if a local authority is being unreasonable and the judge can clearly see they're being unreasonable, the parent may win that case. And I don't think the local authorities have a lot of success in court, to be honest. So this system works quite well, but what we find is that many of the local authorities, this annoys them. They feel they need to have the right to go in more and do more, interfere more and request more information. And so we get repeated attempts to try and change the law so that they can basically trample all over people's human rights. So I want to just talk a little bit about some of the attempts we've had in this country to change the legal situation. So we've had, since about, I think, it was quite a few years now, we've had someone in Parliament stirring trouble in government and basically, okay, now we're going to do a consultation on this thing, and it happens to include home education. So then all the home educators, we have to try and get everybody to get involved to respond to that government consultation. Then maybe the results from that show that there's still too many people who are opposed to that. So then we'll get another something or the other survey, consultation, and it'll maybe ask the question coming from a different angle. And then they'll have this committee, and this committee are meeting and they're discussing it, and we have to challenge when we feel we're not properly represented. And then we'll get somebody like a lord in the House of Lords who might decide he's going to introduce a bill which will give government more control of home educators. And then we have to try and challenge that and stand up to that. And this has been going on, these kinds of actions by politicians and civil servants have been going on for about the last 5 or 6 years. And we've had to continually make sure we are watching everything that's coming out and make sure we respond, and it's really exhausting because they are really determined to bring more control into home education. And now I'm going to just finish off by talking a little bit about why it's important to challenge these attempts by government to control home education. So number one, it interferes with the human right to private family life. And this is also your child's right to a private family life. For the government to come in and into a home and seek to change the way a child is raised. It's not really acceptable unless there's very good reason to see that something is clearly wrong in that family and that's clearly harmful to the child. The government should be leaving families alone unless there's any such concerns. It also interferes with the natural rights of parents to raise their children in accordance with their own beliefs and values. And I'm talking about rights that have been understood universally for thousands and thousands of years. We didn't have governments. We would here and there, you might have a government that's trying to control children, but generally it's been understood you don't interfere with families and how children are raised. The other thing is that it will give the government access to a lot more of our personal information. As we know, this can be abused or exploited. In this country, we've had a lot of issues with leaking of information, very personal information about people, and it can just, in short, we don't trust the authorities to take good care of our information and to treat it with the respect it deserves. And also we know that where government education has been sort of forced and government-controlled education has been forced, we've seen how often it doesn't go well for the child. So the government does not make a good parent itself, and it can never care for a child in the same way that a parent can. They will never have the investment in the outcome of the child that a parent. They will have their own agenda of that outcome for that outcome, but it won't really be an agenda that is in the interest of the child. It's very important to maintain an even balance of power between parent and state. The thing is, the more government intrudes into the family, the less parents will take responsibility for their children, because then they will just say, well, it's the job of the state, it's not my job. And so we will have greater problems in society, because you will not have that parenting that is so necessary for young people. And then I've said it's actually not in the child's best interest. So I have mentioned that a bit before, so I'm not going to discuss that anymore. But we know that it's not in children's best interest. We've seen countries where it's been attempted, and we've seen how that turned out and wasn't good at all. So I want to just kind of finish off by saying it is really important to understand as a family what your rights are and what the implications of further state control are. We, in most countries at least, we still have ways to challenge these kinds of conversations when they come out of where the laws, where someone wants to change the law and so on. So we can write to our politicians, we can try and meet with our politicians, we can try and arrange for them to meet with home educators to see that the children are actually doing well, that everything's good. And so we don't have to just accept that, oh, well, the state has said this is happening, this is the way it needs to be. We don't have to accept that at all. As parents, it is our job to protect our children, and we do protect our children even when it's preventing the state kind of getting involved beyond what they should be. I think most of us do understand that, and we understand the importance of good parenting for children. And so I just want to thank you for letting me contribute today, and just wish you all a good day. Thank you so much.